Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, fueling philanthropic programs and dedicated to creating educational and professional opportunities for Alaska Native people.
Find a living in fisheries. The UAS Fisheries Technology Program offers online study from anywhere in Alaska, plus labs and workshops in many Alaska towns.
Is most likely a chum.
Find your living without leaving where you are. Fisheries Technology from UAS.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. On yesterday's satellite imagery, starting out in the west here, big mass of clouds moving northward in across the western Bering Sea. High cirrus spreading in over the Pribilofs by mid-afternoon on down across Nikolsky, but pretty good here from Unalaska Island up across Bristol Bay, really good in Kodiak Island. Clear, cold temperatures here over the interior, and of course the strong winds there blowing along the North Gulf Coast with the high gusts there at Valdez. Upper level trough here, kind of rotating out in this area, a couple of weak lows dropping southward. That kept some moisture and clouds in over portions of the southeast coast, and then up to the north, system here dropping southeastward. And we'll see that that continued to really not make a big push. Some moisture here from the northwest tracking into the northwest interior there, and a band there coming across the Tanana Valley. That huge plume of moisture out there over the Bering Sea. Today slid eastward and kind of dissipated on its way in. A lot of clouds here out over the Bering Sea, but not a lot of precipitation. Some light rain and snow over the Pribilofs today, and extending back down toward the central Aleutians. More clouds out to the west, the main low center way back out there to the west, and then a few clouds, high stuff coming across Kodiak Island. Another sunny day here with less wind along the North Gulf Coast, south central Alaska. Lots of sunshine. Up to the north though, moisture coming down, northwesterly flow aloft there, a couple of troughs embedded in that flow aloft, and got some clouds, areas of light snow coming in the northern Kuskokwim Valley, up along the Alaska Range, and then scattered across the Tanana, Upper Yukon Valley areas, on up to the Arctic coast, on down the Northway, nothing really making it south of the Alaska Range, so dry conditions there. Pretty nice here over the Panhandle, some lingering scattered snow shower conditions there in Dixon Entrance on down to the south. Otherwise, pretty nice day there with the cold temperatures and the gusty winds, northerly winds, especially in Lynn Canal. On the chart for today, I had the winds, that's where the gradient is, up over the northern Panhandle there. The scattered snow showers down to the south. Dry conditions all the way back to the North Gulf Coast. Again, winds not as strong as they were yesterday. Copper River Delta, Valdez, and those locations, but we have this moisture slipping on south from the Arctic there. So it's just areas of light snow showers or flurries up here, mostly cloudy skies, and then back to the west here along the Alaska Range. So that puts it in the northern Kuskokwim Valley. High pressure at the surface, though, over the southwest interior, pretty light winds there. And same thing on the Arctic coast, really not much of a gradient up there at all, just north to northeast, except along the eastern Arctic coast there. There's a winter storm warning out for tonight, and actually that's out through tomorrow as well, tomorrow night into early Monday morning, with westerly winds gusting to 40 miles an hour, and with the cold temperatures well below zero, looking at wind chills to be 65 degrees below zero, blowing snow, so winter storm warning out for those conditions through Monday. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, not so for the west side, a lot less wind, And not too much wind tonight here from the western Arctic coast southward all the way to Bristol Bay there. This lingering area of moisture, rain or snow, mixed precipitation dissipating here with that warm front as the push back to the east there, or the easterly flow pushes that back to the west. Another low rolls up here to the western Aleutians. Not all that strong, not all that significant. That's going to keep the mild southeasterly flow locked into the Adak and Atka area, along with the chance of continuing chance of rain, especially for Adak and not so much for Atka. Should be mostly cloudy for the Alaska Peninsula with not much in the way of wind. And we still have the snow here across the Tanana Valley, light snow north of the Alaska Range, so down maybe from Nebezna, North Waytoke, all the way up to possibly Eagle. And then again, that winter storm warning eastern Arctic coast, mostly for the wind chills to 65 below zero there. Be a little bit of flurries lingering up in that area as well. And also down here, mostly Dixon entrance coming up to maybe Metlakatla on over toward Hyder, but mostly clear in the north and continued windy. Well, those gale force northerlies will continue, especially for Lynn Canal, or for Lynn Canal, for tomorrow there out of the north, 40, 45 knots, less wind, a lot less wind, down to 20 for Stevens Passage here with less gradient and even along the coast. Not much change here in the North Gulf Coast. May start to see a few clouds getting south of the mountains here into the Copper River Basin, maybe northern Cook Inlet, but most of the moisture is going to stay to the north. And again, even that's not very much up in that area. And not too bad, just variable clouds here over the eastern interior areas. Another trough, really not doing much there to the Arctic coast, but again, that winter storm warning out through tomorrow and tomorrow night. High pressure still about almost 1,040 millibars over the Russian Far East. Really no gradient here. Dry conditions, light winds, St. Lawrence Island to the Bering Strait. Winds pick up a little bit, but not very strong for the southwest coast here. Fair over the interior. And a little breezy and chilly there for Kodiak Island. Nice for the Alaska Peninsula. Looks like this moisture here staying west of the Pribilof Islands. A front hanging up there out over the western Aleutians. Central Aleutians actually pushing in from the western Aleutians. Keeps it wet over Adak and Atka. And the windiest conditions will be, of course, out in advance of the front with less wind in behind. And then for Monday, that front begins to nudge eastward a little bit there as another front comes into the far western Aleutians with some increasing wind. Probably not reaching gale force before Monday night out there, but anyway, that'll pop a ridge up here and I'll try to shove that thing eastward a little bit, but not far enough to take Adak out of the rain. Maybe some of the moisture will slide into the Nikulski area. Otherwise, Pribilofs down across the Alaska Peninsula and Alaska staying pretty dry. Cold northeasterly flow here keeps VFR conditions all along the southwest coast and out toward the Pribilofs as well. Looks pretty good VFR-wise right up through the Bering Strait, areas into the Chukchi Sea. But the northwesterly flow coming around the top of that high continues to bring weak disturbances, surges of snow, flurries, very light stuff there. Really only making for periods of IFR as each one of those surges pass by up there on the coast and then locally into the North Slope. Not making it south of the Brooks Range at all, if even it makes it to the Brooks Range period. So lots of clear skies here. There'll be a few clouds lingering around, but fair conditions, definitely dry. And temperatures on the cold side, really cold air mass coming down from Banks Island up there. Temperatures today around 50 below zero up in this area. And that northerly flow is going to keep the cold Arctic air locked in across the Yukon, especially the eastern interior, on down into the Panhandle. So continue the heavy freezing spray, 40 knot northerlies for Lynn Canal. Winds diminish on down to the south again. Really not looking for much change from what you've seen for the next couple of days. Mostly cloudy, light winds, chance of snow showers there. Prince of Wales Island and from probably south of Wrangell. Otherwise dry and cold to the north. Temperatures down that way today, mostly in the 20s, starting way down there, mid to mid 20s, maybe some upper 20s farther south. Otherwise, Yakutat had 27, 24 in Juneau, and the North Gulf Coast, 20s to near 30 with 29 there at Cordova, 21 degrees in Kenai, 30 down at Homer, around 10 or a little above there, the Copper River Basin, 23 in Talkeetna. And 10 degrees at Fairbanks this afternoon, while Eagle had 5 to the west, 10 and 11 above, -6 at Bettles, and Amtuvik -8. And temperatures there where the colder air is, again, low -20s for the eastern Arctic coast. So with that wind chill 65 below zero there for the winter storm warning. Milder conditions, less wind back to the west. Ambler up to 0 this afternoon, -9 Kivalina, while Nome and Shishmaref both had 7 above, 17 Savunga. And in the teens here for the Kuskokwim and lower Yukon Valley areas, Bethel 16 degrees, same thing at McGrath, 14 Monic, and 23 at Macoriac. And for the south central temperatures here, 34 at Kodiak Island. And for the Alaska Peninsula, mostly in the 30s there, although Cold Bay up to 39 degrees, mid to upper 30s for the Pribilofs. Unalaska up to 42 degrees. And for the west side there, Western Aleutians, we had 30s again here for the Alaska Peninsula. Atka up to 45 degrees this afternoon for the warm spot in the state. And for the lows tonight, single numbers and teens here for the Panhandle, depending on where you have the wind blowing, and about that same pattern for the North Gulf Coast, dropping down to near or below 0. Big variation here, south central Alaska, Copper River Basin, well below 0 from the Tanana Valley northward there to the -30s with the wind up there on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, -teens down across the Seward Peninsula, a shade above 0 there for St. Lawrence Island, warming up to near the frost point there at St. Paul. Upper 30s for the Aleutians, and single numbers to near 0 or a little below for northeast Bristol Bay. And highs tomorrow, well below 0, Bettles northward on out to the Arctic coast, nudging up to 5 there for Nome. 10 to 15 here across the lower Yukon River Valley areas to near 20 over Bristol Bay, into the 30s for the Alaska Peninsula and 40s for the Aleutians, 20s for the Panhandle. Flying weather tomorrow morning, late tonight, VFR even along the coast here, some marginal stuff hugging the Arctic coast, but good VFR all the way down across the Panhandle. And then moisture out here, just some patchy IFR, the main area, of course, out with the frontal boundary here for the central Aleutians, back off to the northwest. And then for tomorrow afternoon, really not changing a whole lot here, kind of a stationary pattern, that front hanging up here right across the central Aleutians, and that dissipating band out in advance, staying off the coast again. So really looking good VFR-wise across much of the interior, North Gulf Coast, and even the Panhandle. So for passes, Anatuvik looks to be, I think the VFR won out here, and there's a lot more VFR than there will be marginal. And for Adigan VFR conditions, Lake Clark and Merrill wide open, same forecast for rainy, for windy also VFR, Mentasta, Isabel, all open, Tanita, Ceilings visibility is unlimited for Portage, and Chilkoot and White as well. And for the freezing levels, of course, all the cold air coming southward down to Kodiak Island, and at the surface across the Gulf of Alaska down across Queen Charlotte's, and then southerly flow here, a big push of warm air. That's that's 8,000 feet there, all the way up to into the central Bering Sea there, with the gradient across the Alaska Peninsula, and also out here in advance of the front with colder conditions back to the west. Icing, none over the interior, none for the Panhandle, and none for the Bering Sea, just from about Nikolsky to Amchitka, areas of light to very isolated moderate rime type icing there, zeroing in on Adak and Atka. And the upper level wind flow chart, southeasterly flow to the west of that ridge there, that's holding that front in position. And then northwest flow, 70 up to 140 knots coming down across Kodiak Island. Northerly flow, very cold air coming, or will stay in over the eastern interior areas on down into the Panhandle with that Arctic trough. And looking at 9,000 feet, 25 to 35 knot northerlies there for the Panhandle. Much lighter down to the south toward Dixon Entrance, 30 to 35 knots for the North Gulf Coast. Northwest 55, eastern Arctic coast, light here through the ridge axis. Southeasterlies up to 50 knots there, 30 to 50 knots out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Same pattern at 3,000 feet. Wind's a little lighter though, 20 to 25, and then maybe 30 knots there near the front over the central Aleutians. Northwest flow, 25 to 35 here, Barren Islands, Kodiak into the Gulf, 45 knots there, say from Lynn Canal over toward Yakutat, but the strongest wind staying to your west there for the Panhandle, lighter conditions over the southern areas. And for turbulence, light to isolated moderate chop here in the turquoise area, northern Panhandle over to Yakutat, right up across the coastal mountains there, and then again here for the Barrens, Kamishak Bay, lee side of the Aleutian Range and Kodiak Island, eastern Arctic coast, occasional moderate chop with those winds, and also an area here over the Aleutians. It's not really significant at all. So after the break, I'll be back to look at the marine forecasts.
For many years, NASA has been sending robotic spacecraft to faraway planets like Mars. Some of these missions have included instruments that have given us a basic understanding of the types of radiation we can expect outside the Earth orbit. Even with this knowledge, there is still much to be learned about how the radiation in deep space will affect our astronaut crews. To help increase our knowledge base, a unique facility called the NASA Space Radiation Laboratory is testing living cells with the types of radiation found in space. Our Johnny Alonso traveled to the Brookhaven National Laboratory in Long Island, New York to find out more.
Radiation exposure is a very real risk for astronauts. Ailments such as cataracts and many forms of cancer can be directly attributed to high exposure levels. Because most of our recent astronauts have remained in low Earth orbit where the Earth's magnetosphere provides some protection from radiation, exposure has been somewhat limited. But with future astronauts traveling to destinations like the Moon and Mars, radiation exposure will once again be at the forefront of study.
To help us prepare for these dangerous space missions, NASA, in cooperation with the Brookhaven National Laboratory, is conducting research to help us understand the biological effects of space radiation. I spoke with Dr. Marcela Vasquez at the NASA Space Radiation Laboratory here in Long Island, New York, to find out more.
Well, basically, I'm interested to find out if a galactic cosmic ray can kill brain cells. So in order to understand that, we have different models. For example, culture cells and petri dishes, expose them to cosmic rays and see if the cosmic ray can kill brain cells or produce some functional damage. That's one part of my research. The other part is study animals. If after cosmic ray radiation, they have some kind of behavioral changes or functional changes after long terms after exposure. Basically, we're going to try to understand the risk for astronauts for neurological damage induced by cosmic rays.
So how is galactic cosmic radiation different from other types of radiation?
Basically, we can say that the origin of these galactic cosmic rays are far, far away from us, outside our galaxy. Basically, supernovas well beyond our galaxy explode and produce this kind of tremendous release of energy, and that energy is cosmic rays. So cosmic rays are basically atoms, elements, that travel in space near the speed of light. And one of the big unknowns is what kind of biological effect this cosmic ray can produce on astronauts. And this is really important for the new exploration mission to go back to the Moon and go to Mars. So our concern is that those cosmic rays, those atoms that are flying out through the universe, they have the potential to produce damage. So one of the goals is try to find out what is the best strategies to reduce the risk for astronauts, for example, for Mars mission and Moon outposts and sorties. There's several ways we can protect, and we believe that this radiation risks is not a showstopper for astronauts, but there's a lot of unknowns, and that we need to reduce those unknowns in order to send astronauts in a safe way. But no matter what, astronauts with the best shielding, the best strategy, always will be exposed to some level of radiation.
How do you simulate galactic cosmic radiation on Earth?
We have what is called the NASA Space Radiation Laboratory. It's a facility to simulate the space radiation environment for biology or material sciences. So we have at Brookhaven big machines called particle accelerators. We benefit for that because they can accelerate cosmic rays like iron or carbon to the speed and energy that you will encounter in space. So these big machines deliver in a controlled fashion those heavy ions or charged particles to a target room. And so we can put cells, tissues on molecules in our target area and expose to those cosmic rays to understand what are the basic mechanisms. So the NASA have a research program addressing different topics like brain damage, cancer, DNA damage repair. It's a multi-user facility dedicated to support the NASA radiation health program.
How will biological research assist us in keeping our astronaut crews safe?
The first step is to understand the mechanism. So imagine this. These heavy particles traveling out through your body traverse your cells, your skin, your brain, or liver. And we know for the fact, by our basic research, that when these particles traverse a cell, produce DNA molecule damage.
Ionizing radiation is a stream of particles that, when passing through a body, has enough energy to cause the atoms to lose electrons. These heavy ions can damage living cells and may cause changes in the cell's ability to carry out repair and reproduction. This could lead to mutations in an astronaut's cells, which may result in tumors, cancer, genetic defects in offspring, or even death. By one NASA estimate, for each year an astronaut spends in deep space, about 1/3 of their cell nuclei will be hit directly with heavy ions. With this knowledge in hand, a big push is on to better understand exactly how to properly protect our new exploration crews.
Can you tell me the risks of long-term exposure versus short-term exposure?
Overall, NASA is concerned what is the total risk imposed by solar particle events that will be acute, so a really high dose of radiation delivered in a short period of time. But the good news that we know how to protect astronauts for that. But one of the big risks is the chronic low-dose exposure to galactic cosmic rays, and we still are thinking what is the best way to protect astronauts for that kind of risk.
In one study, it was determined that an astronaut on a 900-day Mars mission, housed inside a conventional spacecraft, would encounter nearly 1.1 sieverts of radiation. That is the equivalent to the amount of radiation one would be exposed to in 550 years on Earth.
So what does the future hold for this type of research?
Well, I think it's a bright future because for NASA and the plans to return to the moon and go to Mars, radiation is a really critical risk that need to be studied. So our research will play a critical role for future plans.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying.
North 15 to 20 for the North Gulf Coast, northeast 15 for Prince William Sound. And for Bristol Bay tomorrow, north 15 easterly here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula at 20. Light variable winds Cape Sarachev to Castle Cape to Sitkinak, they turn northwest at 20. And then for Monday, northeast here up to 25 on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Heavy freezing spray here all the way up to the ice there in Bristol Bay. Otherwise north to northeast 15 to 20. For the Pacific side of those zones. And then for the Aleutians, ahead of the front here, easterlies at 30 knots, falling back and turning southerly out across Unalaska Island. Behind the front, westerlies at 25 knots. And then for Monday, that'll nudge eastward here. Should push the front maybe to Atka, maybe. Otherwise, easterlies to southeast 20 to 25 for the Fox Islands. And then for St. Lawrence Island tomorrow, northeast 10, but still brisk wind advisories here south of Nunivak Island. Small crafts for the Pribilofs, gales for St. Matthew Island, heavy freezing spray. And for Monday, no change here for St. Lawrence Island. Easterlies 15 to 20 for St. Matthew Island, northeast 20 south of Nunivak Island. Small craft advisories for the Pribilofs. And up along the Arctic coast there, strongest winds here will be on the east side. Again, gusts of 40 miles per hour, small craft advisories, but dropping back to 15 for the central coast, westerly at the same speed on the west side, northwest for the Chukchi Sea. And for Monday, northwest winds here from Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort, otherwise westerlies for a majority of the coast, but staying in the brisk wind advisory levels there for the east side. And looking at tonight's chart again, the forecast, light snow, a couple of disturbances aloft coming southward in basically northerly flow aloft. Quite cold air continues to pour southward here, but light snow banking up along the Alaska Range. South of the mountains though, pretty good. Channeled windy conditions there, otherwise just clear and cold here once again down to Kodiak Island. Northward through the central interior, especially those light winds, temperatures falling well below zero. A weakening band of moisture here, that warm front near the coast, but staying off it, north of the Pribilofs, wet and windy out over the western central Aleutian areas. And looking at still a chance of some snow shower activity there from Hyder, Stewart, maybe across Metlakatla, Dixon entrance, cold and windy over the northern panhandle. That pattern continues through tomorrow as well, with a chance of snow showers down to the south, and then light snow here north side of the Alaska Range, maybe across areas of the Tanana Valley, but basically dry up here. Windy conditions, winter storm warning, wind chill 65 below for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Fair and cold over the interior, and a front hangs up there for the central Aleutians, keeping it wet and windy in that area, nudging eastward a little bit, but not much on Monday. Otherwise, continued clear cold conditions over the interior. Maybe some flurries, another system coming down from the northwest of the Arctic coast, and a tight gradient, very cold, heavy freezing spray there for the northern panhandle, with a chance of snow showers continuing there over the southern southeast coast. That's a look at the weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.